She had been rejected her whole life for standing only 4 feet 10 inches tall, but when that widowed farmer lifted her into his arms for the first time, he whispered in her ear that she was exactly the perfect size to fit inside his heart. Can you imagine spending 26 years being treated as invisible, as if your small body made your feelings smaller too? But this story happened in rural Georgia in 1928. In a time when a woman's worth was often measured by inches and appearances. Before we continue, I have a small request. If you are enjoying this story, leave a comment below telling me where you are watching from. Write down your city, your state, or even your country if you are joining us from outside the US. It really helps me to know who is on the other side of the screen, and I love reading every single one of your comments. So take a moment now and comment below where you are watching from. Marianne Sawyer had hands that worked miracles with needle and thread, but that was all anyone saw when they looked at her. The hands, never the delicate face with fine features, never the deep brown eyes that shone with intelligence, never the soft curve of lips that rarely smiled but held wise words. Only the hands, because the rest of her, in the eyes of the world, simply didn't exist in the right measure. On that October morning in 1928, Marianne woke before the sun rose in the small servants' quarters behind the Montgomery mansion in Atlanta. The room measured 10 by 8 feet, had a narrow window facing the chicken coop, and a thin mattress on a wooden frame. But it had been hers for 8 years. 8 years sewing ball gowns, mending linen sheets, embroidering bridal trousseaux for a family that never invited her to sit at their table. She had a wooden footstool she carried everywhere. It was a piece worn smooth by use, made by a village carpenter years ago, 6 inches high. Without it, Marianne couldn't reach most things in a world that seemed designed for larger people. That morning, she stepped onto the stool to reach the grey dress hanging on a nail in the wall. A simple dress, unadorned, with a high collar and long sleeves. A dress that didn't call attention to itself. The small, spotted mirror on the wall reflected only part of her. Marianne could never see her whole body at once. She had to imagine how others saw her. 4 feet, 10 inches, a measurement she knew by heart because she had been measured so many times in childhood by doctors her mother consulted, hoping for some miracle cure that never came. The big house was beginning to stir. Marianne heard the familiar sounds, the heavy footsteps of Mr. Turner, the groundskeeper, in the main hall. The clinking of china in the kitchen, where Mrs. Beatrice, the cook, was already preparing the family's breakfast, the distant barking of hunting dogs in the kennel, and the shrill voice of Mrs. Eudora Montgomery calling the maids. Marianne pinned her dark brown hair into a tight bun, washed her face in the basin of cold water, and pulled on her worn black leather boots. She picked up her stool and walked along the side of the house to the service entrance. Her place was the sewing room next to the pantry, a windowless space lit by a kerosene lamp where she spent 12 hours a day hunched over fabrics. But that morning, before she could reach the little room, Mrs. Eudora appeared in the hallway. The mistress was 45, wearing a navy blue taffeta dress, even though it was only 7 in the morning. Her red hair piled in an elaborate coiffure, her face powdered pale. She stopped when she saw Marianne, and there was something different in her expression. It wasn't the usual indifference. It was discomfort. "Marianne, I need to speak with you," said the mistress in a voice that tried to sound kind but came out false. "Come to the study." Marianne's heart raced. In 8 years working there, she had never been called to the study. That was the territory of the late Mr. Montgomery, now inherited by his son Augustus. She followed the mistress down the hall, carrying her stool, feeling the curious gazes of the other maids. The study smelled of cigars and leather. Shelves of books, no one read, covered the walls. Augustus Montgomery sat behind the mahogany desk, a man of 32, moustache-trimmed, immaculate grey suit. Beside him stood a young woman Marianne had never seen. She must have been about 25, blonde, tall, in a peach-colored dress and a hat with plumes. She looked at everything with the air of someone appraising property. "This is Marianne, our seamstress," announced Mrs. Eudora. "Marianne, this is Letitia, Augustus's fiancée. They are to be married in June, and she will be moving in with us." "Pleasure, ma'am," said Marianne softly, dropping a slight curtsy. Letitia observed Marianne from head to toe with cold blue eyes. She didn't return the greeting. She merely turned to Augustus and whispered something Marianne couldn't hear, but which made the man clear his throat awkwardly. "Marianne, you have been an exemplary employee," began Mrs. Eudora in a rehearsed tone. "Your sewing is flawless. You've never given cause for complaint, but we are undergoing changes in the household. With Letitia's arrival, we need to make some adjustments to the staff." Marianne's heart plummeted. She knew the meaning of those words before the mistress even continued. Mrs. Eudora took a deep breath, avoiding looking directly at Marianne. "Letitia comes from a very traditional family in Savannah. She is accustomed to a certain standard and, well, she feels that a house of our importance needs to have a suitable presentation in all aspects. You understand?" No, Marianne didn't understand. Or rather, she understood perfectly, and it burned like a branding iron. Letitia finally spoke, her voice high and firm. "It's nothing personal, my dear," she said, using a term of false intimacy that sounded like an insult. "It's just that when I receive my friends for tea, when I host dinners, I need the maids to have a certain presence. You comprehend, don't you? A woman of your stature might cause inappropriate comments. People might think we keep servants out of pity, not competence." Marianne felt the blood rush to her face. Her hands began to tremble. She looked at Mrs. Eudora, searching for some sign of humanity, some defense. But the mistress looked away. "We will pay 2 months' wages in advance," said Augustus, with the voice of someone wanting to end an uncomfortable conversation. "It is more than fair, and you may use the house as a reference to find new employment." 2 months. 8 years of flawless work were worth 2 months. "You may gather your things today," added Mrs. Eudora. "I hope you find a suitable position soon." Suitable position. The words echoed with cruelty. Suitable for whom? For a woman the world considered unsuitable by nature. Marianne left the study without saying a word. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. She walked back to the little room in the back, closed the door, and sat on the thin mattress. Only then did she allow the tears to come, but even crying, they were silent tears. She had learned from a very young age to suffer without making noise. She had saved money over the 8 years. She kept every penny left over after buying essentials. The money was hidden in a biscuit tin under the mattress. Marianne counted the coins and bills with shaking hands. Adding the 2 months she would receive, she had enough for perhaps 6 months if she lived with extreme economy, 6 months to find new work. But what work? The wealthy houses wanted maids who were young, pretty, tall, who served the eyes of the masters and guests well. The textile mills required workers who could reach the looms. The shops sought salesgirls who made a good impression. Even the boarding houses preferred chambermaids who didn't need to climb on stools to change sheets. Marianne spent the day gathering her belongings. She didn't have much. 3 dresses, 2 skirts, 4 blouses, mended undergarments, a wool shawl, the boots she wore, a pair of shoes for church, a comb and hairbrush, soap, and a prayer book she had received from her mother before she died. Everything fit into a battered leather suitcase that weighed more empty than the life Marianne carried inside. Mrs. Beatrice, the cook, was the only one who said goodbye with genuine affection. A stout woman in her 50s, hands calloused from kneading dough, kind eyes. She hugged Marianne at the exit and whispered that the house was losing the best seamstress in the state. She pressed a cloth bundle into Marianne's hand with biscuits, cheese, and dried peaches. "For the road," she said, "wherever you go. Marianne left the Montgomery mansion at twilight in October. The sky was tinged with orange and purple. The city of Atlanta buzzed with late afternoon movement. Carriages, automobiles, electric streetcars, people rushing. Marianne walked along the cobblestone streets, carrying the suitcase that grew heavier with every step, the wooden stool tucked under her arm. She needed a place to sleep. She went to Mrs. Higgins' boarding house, a simple establishment near the train station, where single women could rent rooms for modest prices. The landlady, a thin woman with grey hair pulled back, examined Marianne with a calculating look when she asked for a room. "It's $2.50 a week," she said dryly. "Payment in advance. Bath once a week, linens changed every fortnight, no male visitors, no noise after 9 at night." Marianne paid for 2 weeks. She was given a tiny room on the 3rd floor, with an iron bed, a worm-eaten dresser, and a window facing a dark alley. It smelled of mold and mouse droppings, but it had a roof and a door that locked. Over the following days, Marianne scoured Atlanta looking for work. She knocked on the doors of rich houses offering sewing services. She was turned away before she could even show her skills. The mistresses looked at her with a mixture of pity and discomfort, inventing excuses. "We already have a seamstress. We aren't in need. Come back another day." She tried the textile factories. The foreman laughed in her face. "Need to reach the machines, missy. This ain't no place for you." She searched shops, haberdasheries, fashion houses. The answers always came loaded with euphemisms that meant the same thing. "You won't do. You aren't what we're looking for. You don't have the right look." The weeks passed. The money shrank. Marianne began skipping meals. She bought only day-old bread and a piece of cheese that lasted days. She was wasting away in a body that was already small, becoming almost transparent. It was on a Sunday in November, when she was already in her 5th week of desperate searching, that Marianne saw the notice at church. Father Anselm, the vicar of the parish she attended, kept a bulletin board in the vestibule where parishioners posted job offers, property sales, prayer requests. The yellowed paper, pinned with a tack, said in irregular handwriting, "Cook needed for farm in the country. White Creek region, food and board included. Wage of $30 monthly, interested parties. See Mr. Williams, solicitor on Commerce Street." $30 was a low wage, less than half what she earned as a specialized seamstress, but it included food and board. Marianne tore the paper from the board before anyone else could see it. The next day, she presented herself at the law office. Mr. William was a man in his 60s, thin, balding, with steel-rimmed spectacles. He examined Marianne when she entered the establishment that smelled of old paper and ink stamps. "I came about the cook advertisement," said Marianne, trying to sound confident. The solicitor furrowed his brows. "Do you have experience in a farm kitchen? Food for field hands is different from city food," Marianne lied, without blinking. "I worked 3 years cooking on a farm in Macon before coming to Atlanta. I know how to make hearty meals, grits, collard greens, cured ham, cornbread, stew. I know how to work with a wood stove, a clay oven." The solicitor didn't seem entirely convinced, but there was exhaustion in his eyes. "That position has been open for 2 months, he said, sighing. "No one wants to go. It's far, isolated, difficult employer." "Difficult how?" asked Marianne. The man took off his glasses, wiped them with a handkerchief. "He's a widower, lives alone on a farm that's half abandoned, just 2 hands tending the crops. They say the man is strange, doesn't talk, stays locked up, but he pays on time, that I guarantee. I managed the property when the old owner was alive." Marianne felt something strange in her chest. It wasn't fear, it was almost hope. An isolated place, far from judgmental eyes, where perhaps she could work in peace. "I accept the job," she said firmly. The solicitor observed her for a long moment. He looked at Marianne's stature, hesitated. "Miss, are you sure? It is heavy work, hauling wood, water from the well, sacks of supplies. Can you manage that?" "I can," replied Marianne, lifting her chin. "I am small, but I am not weak." He nodded slowly. "Very well. The farm is called Victory Estate, about 20 miles from White Creek. You take the train to White Creek, then catch a wagon heading to the countryside. The owner is named Gabriel Thorne. He doesn't usually come to town, so you'll go straight to the farm. I'll write a letter of introduction for you to take." 3 days later, Marianne was at the Atlanta train station with her battered suitcase and the wooden stool. She had sold what wasn't essential, kept only the necessary. She paid the fare, which consumed a good part of the money she had left. The train whistled, released steam, and began to move with a jolt. Marianne looked out the window, watching Atlanta fall behind. A city that never wanted her, houses, streets, people that always made her feel wrong. She felt something strange in her chest. It wasn't sadness. It was almost relief. The journey lasted 4 hours through landscapes that changed gradually. Atlanta, with its elegant buildings, gave way to smaller towns, then villages, finally open fields dotted with farms. It was early November 1928, autumn, and the cotton fields were white, waiting for the late harvest, or brown where the picking was done. Marianne stepped off at the White Creek station at noon, a small place, wooden platform, adjacent general store, a few horses tied up. The autumn sun was bright despite the chill that was beginning to appear in the mornings. She needed to find a wagon going to the rural zone. She asked the station agent, a middle-aged man in a railway cap. He pointed to a thin fellow sitting under the shade of a tree, chewing on a stalk of wheat. "Mr. Oliver runs transport to the farms," said the agent, "but he only leaves when he gathers enough cargo or passengers to make it worth his while." Marianne approached the wagon driver. "I need to go to Victory Estate." Mr. Oliver spat out the straw, examined Marianne with small, suspicious eyes. "Victory Estate? What business you got there?" "I'm going to work as the cook." The man gave a short, humorless laugh. "Gabriel Thorne's cook? Good luck, missy. The other 2 who tried didn't last a week." "Why?" asked Marianne, feeling apprehension. The driver shrugged. "They say the place is strange, too isolated, too quiet, and the boss hardly says a word, just stares with a sour face. The women got scared and came back." Marianne had nowhere to go back to. "Then I'll have to stay more than a week," she said, with a firmness she didn't feel. The wagon ride lasted 2 hours over dusty dirt roads. They passed large farms with white mansions, painted gates, well-kept fences. But the further they got from town, the more the properties seemed forgotten by time. Victory Estate was almost at the edge of the county. The wooden gate was open, hanging on rusted hinges. The sign with the farm's name was faded, letters almost illegible. The driveway had grass growing down the middle. Mr. Oliver stopped the wagon in front of the main house and whistled. No one appeared. He whistled louder, shouted, "Hello inside! Anybody home?" Silence. Only the wind blowing in the trees, distant cackling of chickens, the solitary lowing of a cow. The driver looked at Marianne with an expression that said, "I told you so." "Want me to wait?" "No," Marianne replied, climbing down from the wagon with difficulty, needing the man's help to reach the ground. "I'm staying, Mr." Oliver took her suitcase, put it on the ground, handed her the stool, looked at the house with something akin to pity. "I'll be back this way next week. If you want to leave, just let me know." The wagon departed, kicking up dust. Marianne stood alone in front of the house that would be her new home. The building was a single story, spacious, made of white painted brick that was now grimy and peeling. It had a wide porch with wooden columns, large windows with shutters closed, a massive wooden front door. Around it, the garden that must have once been beautiful was now overtaken by weeds. Wild roses climbed the walls, grass grew between the stones of the path, fruit trees heavy with pecans, and late apples that no one harvested. Marianne took a deep breath, picked up her suitcase, and walked to the porch. Climbing the 3 steps was a challenge. They were too high for her short legs. She had to sit on the first, drag the suitcase, climb to the second, repeat the process. When she finally reached the door, she was sweating and out of breath. She knocked on the door. Waited. Silence. Knocked harder. Nothing. She turned the knob and the door opened. It wasn't locked. The interior of the house was in twilight. The closed shutters let in only slivers of light. Marianne entered slowly, eyes adjusting to the darkness. She saw a wide living room with furniture covered in white sheets that looked like ghosts, a smell of a closed-up house, mold and dust. A grandfather clock stood stopped at 3:15. "Hello?" called Marianne. "Is anyone there? I'm the new cook." Her voice echoed in the empty house. For a moment, nothing happened. Then she heard heavy footsteps coming from somewhere deep in the house. Slow, dragging steps. A door opened with a creak. A figure appeared in a side hallway. A man, very tall, perhaps 6'1", broad shoulders, lean but strong body, dark brown hair unkempt, several days' stubble, white shirt with sleeves rolled up, trousers of coarse fabric, bare feet, deep-set dark eyes that observed Marianne with an expression impossible to decipher. Gabriel Thorne. It couldn't be anyone else. He stood still looking at her. Said nothing. Just looked. Marianne felt like an insect under a magnifying glass. "I am Marianne Sawyer," she said, forcing a firm voice. "Mr. William the solicitor sent me. I am the cook." Gabriel continued looking. His eyes travelled from Marianne's head down to her feet, then up again. It wasn't a lecherous or judgmental look. It was the look of someone surprised, confused, trying to understand something. "You," he said finally, voice deep, hoarse from disuse. "You are the cook." "Yes." He ran a hand over his face, a gesture of fatigue. "How long do you intend to stay?" The question was strange. Marianne furrowed her brows. "As long as necessary. I came to work." Gabriel gave something resembling a laugh, but without humour. "The other 2 left in 3 days. Said the place was spooky." "And is it?" asked Marianne, lifting her chin. He observed her for a long moment, then shrugged. "I don't think so. But I live here." Gabriel turned and began walking back down the hallway. "Your kitchen is this way," he said without looking back. "There's a maid's room next to it. Mr. Oliver must have left supplies last week. If you need anything, I'll be in the study." Marianne picked up her suitcase and followed the tall man. He walked with long strides, and she had to almost run to keep up. They crossed a corridor with peeling white plaster walls, floorboards creaking. The kitchen was spacious, but in a deplorable state. A large wood-burning stove with an iron oven, a massive wooden table in the center, shelves on the walls, a stone sink with a hand pump for water, a window looking out to the yard. But everything was covered in dirt, dust, remnants of old food. Piles of dirty dishes in the sink, a sour smell of rancid grease. Gabriel stopped at the door, looked around as if seeing the kitchen for the first time. "Sorry about the mess," he said with no emotion in his voice. "I'm not much good at cleaning." That was evident. Marianne set the suitcase down, examined the kitchen with the practical eyes of someone who knows work. "It will take a few days to get this in order." Gabriel nodded. "Do what you think necessary. There's wood stacked in the yard. Well is out back. Chicken coop has about 20 hens. Garden has a few things still growing. Pantry is that door there." He pointed to a side door. Marianne opened it and found a small space with shelves containing sacks of beans, rice, flour, cornmeal, tins of lard, packets of salt, brown sugar, all covered in dust, but in reasonable quantity. "How many people will I be cooking for?" asked Marianne. 3, Me, Mr. Vincent and Mrs. Teresa. They are hands who live in a smaller house near the cotton fields. They come here for lunch and dinner." Marianne nodded, understanding. "And what kind of food do you want?" "Food," Gabriel replied as if the question were odd. "Just that, food that kills hunger." He turned to leave but stopped at the door. Looked at Marianne one more time, and there was something different in his look now. Something resembling curiosity. "You are very small," he said. "Will you manage to carry the pots? They are heavy." The question didn't sound cruel or mocking. It sounded genuinely concerned. This surprised Marianne more than any insult would have. "I'll manage," she replied. "I always have." Gabriel stood still a moment longer, then nodded and left. Folks, if you are liking the story, please leave a comment down below. It helps me so much to keep bringing these tales to you. Marianne stood alone in the filthy kitchen, took a deep breath, rolled up the sleeves of her dress. She had work ahead of her. She spent the next 3 hours cleaning, washed the dirty dishes that had been accumulating for weeks by the smell, scrubbed the stove covered in burnt grease, swept the floor which had layers of grime, wiped down the shelves with a wet cloth, organized the pantry supplies, threw out what was spoiled. The work was heavy. Marianne had to use the stool constantly to reach high shelves, to reach the back of the stove. Her back ached from stretching so much. Her arms trembled from carrying buckets of water from the well. But she didn't stop. When the sun began to dip on the horizon, the kitchen was different. It wasn't perfect, but it was clean. It smelled of soap and fresh water instead of old grease and mold. Marianne examined the pantry again, decided to make simple food for dinner. Rice, beans, sautéed collard greens, fried eggs. She lit the wood stove, waited for the fire to catch properly, began to cook. She was frying the eggs when she heard voices in the yard. A door opened and an elderly couple entered the kitchen. The man must have been about 60, short and stocky, skin leathery from the sun, grey hair, large farm worker hands. The woman was about the same age, plump, round face, simple calico dress, apron tied at the waist. They stopped when they saw Marianne, looked at her, looked at the clean kitchen, looked at each other. "You the new cook?" the woman asked. "I am, Marianne Sawyer." "Mr. Vincent and Mrs. Teresa," the man said, pointing to himself and his wife. "We've worked here going on 30 years, since the old boss was alive." Mrs. Teresa approached, examined Marianne with eyes that were kind but curious. "My goodness, you are tiny. You going to handle the work?" "I will," Marianne replied, with a firmness she was tired of needing to demonstrate. The woman smiled. "Well, the kitchen looks better than it has in the last 3 years, so I reckon so. Poor Gabriel tried cooking for himself after Amelia died, but the man can't even fry an egg right." "Amelia was his wife," Mr. Vincent explained. "Died in childbirth 3 years ago. The baby died with her. Since then, Gabriel got this way, locked up, silent, half dead inside too." Marianne felt a tightness in her chest, looked at the dark hallway where Gabriel had disappeared. Imagined that tall, solitary man losing wife and child at the same time, carrying a big, empty house alone. "Teresa, don't go gossiping about the boss's life to the girl," Mr. Vincent scolded his wife, but Mrs. Teresa ignored him. "It's good for her to know what she's getting into. This place is dead, child. The farm was beautiful when Mrs. Elvira was alive, Gabriel's mother. There were parties, music, people coming and going, but she died 5 years ago. Then came Amelia, but she never liked it here. Was from the city, wanted to go back, didn't care for nothing. And after she died, Gabriel let everything rot. The other hands left. Today it's just me and Vincent. The house is falling to pieces. Gabriel barely leaves the study." "Why did you stay?" asked Marianne. Mrs. Teresa looked out the window to the fields in the distance. "Because we got nowhere to go, and because Gabriel, despite everything, is a good man. Pays on time, don't yell, don't hit. He's just broken inside. Needs someone to bring life back to this place. The kitchen door opened again. Gabriel entered. He had washed his face, slicked his hair back, put on a clean shirt. Still had stubble, but looked less wild. Stopped when he saw Mr. Vincent and Mrs. Teresa. "Dinner is ready," Marianne announced. The four sat at the kitchen table. It was strange at first. No one spoke, just the sound of cutlery on plates, people chewing. Marianne ate slowly, discreetly observing the others. Mr. Vincent and Mrs. Teresa ate with appetite, cleaning their plates. Gabriel ate mechanically, like someone fulfilling an obligation to keep a body running, but with no pleasure at all. "The food is good," Mr. Vincent said eventually. Gabriel raised his eyes, looked at Marianne. "It is," he agreed. "Better than I can do." It was a minimal compliment, but coming from that man who barely spoke, it seemed to mean more. After dinner, Mrs. Teresa offered to help with the dishes, but Marianne refused. Preferred to do it alone, learn where everything went. The couple said goodnight and left through the back door. Gabriel stood in the kitchen doorway, watching Marianne wash the dishes. She needed to step up on the stool to reach the sink properly. He watched this in silence. "Need me to lower anything?" he asked finally. Marianne turned, surprised. "The shelves there could be a little lower," she admitted. Gabriel nodded. "I'll do that tomorrow." He turned to leave, but Marianne called him. "Mr. Thorne!" He stopped, looked back. "Gabriel. You can call me Gabriel." "Gabriel," she corrected. "The solicitor said there is a maid's room. Where is it?" He pointed to a side door. "There. Has a bed, dresser, window. Must be dusty. No one's used it in a long time." "All right, thank you." Gabriel stood a moment longer, as if wanting to say something, but not knowing how. Finally, he nodded and left. The maid's room was small, but better than the cubicle in Atlanta. It had a single bed with a reasonable mattress, a wooden dresser, a chair, a window overlooking the wild garden. Marianne opened the window, letting fresh air in, swept the floor, shook out the sheets, made the bed with her own linens she brought in the suitcase. That night, lying in a new bed in an unknown place, Marianne lay awake listening to the sounds of the farm. Wind in the trees, crickets singing, an owl hooting in the distance. Inside the house, the heavy silence of a large, empty building. She thought about Gabriel Thorne. Tall, lonely man, broken inside. Thought about how he hadn't looked at her height with contempt or mockery, only with curiosity and then with genuine concern. He was different from any man she had ever met. The following days established a routine. Marianne woke at dawn, lit the stove, prepared coffee, biscuits, eggs. Gabriel appeared promptly at 7, ate in silence, went out to work in the fields with Mr. Vincent. Marianne spent the morning cleaning other parts of the house, preparing lunch. At noon, the three men and Mrs. Teresa returned to eat. In the afternoon, more work, dinner at 6. Solitary nights. But small things began to change. On the third day, Marianne woke to find 3 kitchen shelves remounted lower. Gabriel had done it during the night without saying anything. On the 5th day, she found wooden steps built in front of all the high cupboards, small 6-inch steps that allowed her to reach everything without needing the stool. On the 7th day, there was a new stool in the kitchen, more stable than hers, wider, made of good varnished wood, careful carpentry work. Marianne said nothing about these changes. Gabriel said nothing about doing them. But she noticed, and he knew she noticed. It was a silent conversation between two people accustomed to being invisible. In the second week, while preparing lunch, Marianne heard a noise in the living room. Went to investigate and found Gabriel removing the sheets covering the furniture. Clouds of dust rose, revealing leather sofas, upholstered armchairs, bookcases, a black and shiny piano against the wall. "Do you play?" Marianne asked, pointing to the piano. Gabriel looked at the instrument with a distant expression. "My mother played. She tried to teach me, but I was never good." Amelia didn't play either. He ran a hand over the piano lid, fingers leaving trails in the dust. "Why are you uncovering everything?" Marianne asked gently. Gabriel took a while to answer. "Don't know," he said finally. "The house was getting clean because of you. Seemed wrong to leave everything covered." Marianne felt something warm in her chest. "Want me to clean the room too?" He looked at her. For the first time since Marianne arrived, he smiled. It was a small smile, almost imperceptible, but it was there. "If you don't mind." "I don't mind." She spent the afternoon cleaning the living room. Gabriel helped move the heavy furniture. They worked in comfortable silence, just sounds of cloths scrubbing wood, broom on the floor, furniture being dragged. At one point, Marianne climbed on a chair to clean pictures hanging on the wall. The chair wobbled. She lost her balance. Was going to fall. Large, strong hands caught her by the waist. Gabriel caught her in the air, held her easily, set her back on the floor with gentleness. For a moment they stood like that, him with hands still on her waist, her looking up at his face. "Careful," Gabriel said, voice hoarse. "Don't want you to get hurt." "Thank you," Marianne whispered. He pulled his hands away as if he had touched something hot. "Sorry, I didn't mean to. Just didn't want you to fall." "It's all right. I appreciate it." Gabriel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Marianne was starting to recognize as a sign he was uncomfortable. "I'll let you finish," he said, leaving the room quickly. But Marianne stood where she was, heart beating fast. Still felt the warmth of his hands on her waist. Hands that held her not as if she were a fragile doll or a child, but as if she were a real woman who deserved care. That night, during dinner, Gabriel spoke more than usual. Said the cotton was finishing up, but there were pecans to gather, that Mr. Vincent said it would be a good yield this year, that maybe he could hire a few more hands for the next planting season. Mrs. Teresa looked from Gabriel to Marianne with a significant expression, looked at her husband and winked. After dinner, while Marianne washed dishes, Gabriel stayed in the kitchen. Didn't help, but stayed there, leaning against the doorframe, just watching. "Can I ask something?" he said eventually. "You may. Why did you accept coming here? The solicitor said you worked in Atlanta. More opportunities there." Marianne continued washing plates, but her hands slowed down. "Didn't have any more opportunities for me," she said. "Was let go from my previous job." "Why?" She hesitated. Part of her wanted to lie, invent some dignified excuse, but something in his voice, in his silent presence, asked for honesty. "Because I'm too short," she said simply. "The new mistress said I didn't have adequate presence for an important house." Silence. Marianne turned, expecting to see pity or embarrassment on Gabriel's face. But what she saw was anger. Cold, controlled anger. But anger nonetheless. "What kind of people judge a person like that?" he said, voice tense. "The same kind that judges a bastard son," Marianne replied gently. Gabriel looked at her surprised. "Mr. Vincent told you." "Mrs. Teresa." But she didn't speak with malice, just explaining why the farm is how it is. Gabriel gave a humorless laugh. "Everyone knows. My father had a legitimate wife and 7 children on his estate. I was the bastard he had with a seamstress from the village. My mother worked herself to death, raising me alone. When my uncle died and left this farm to her, it was the first time we had something of our own." "Now it's you who has something of your own," Marianne said. "Yeah," Gabriel agreed. "But sometimes a person can have land, a house, money, and still feel like they have nothing, because there's no one to share it with." He looked at her with an intensity that made Marianne look away. "Yes," he said softly. "Exactly that." The tension in the air was palpable. Marianne felt her heart racing again. Gabriel took a step toward her, stopped, ran a hand through his hair. "I'll let you rest," he said abruptly. "Good night, Marianne." Good night, Gabriel." He left quickly. Marianne stood in the kitchen, hands still wet with soapy water, breathing irregular. Something was changing. She felt it in the way he looked at her, in the way he found excuses to be near, in the gentleness with which he had built steps for her, in the concern when she almost fell. And Marianne recognized these signs because she felt them herself. The heat rising in her face when Gabriel entered the kitchen. The way her heart raced when their fingers touched accidentally passing a plate. The way she started fixing herself up a little more every morning, pinning her hair more prettily, wearing her least worn dress. In the third week, Gabriel asked if she wanted to see the fields. It was Saturday afternoon, not much work. Marianne accepted. They walked side by side along the dirt paths between the rows. The plants were mostly bare now, the harvest nearly done, but the land was vast. The autumn sun was golden and warm. "It's beautiful," Marianne said, admiring the landscape. "My mother loved this place," Gabriel recounted. "Used to say that after years living in a cramped room in the village, having open land around was like breathing for the first time." Marianne understood that viscerally. "I know how she felt," she said. "The house where I worked in Atlanta was huge, but I had a 10-foot room. Here, even with the house empty, it feels freer." Gabriel stopped, looked at her. "Doesn't need to be empty." "What do you mean?" He hesitated, choosing words with care. "I mean, you can use the whole house. Don't need to stay just in the kitchen and maid's room. Can sit in the living room, can read the books on the shelf, can play the piano if you know how. This house is too big to stay locked up." "I don't know how to play piano," Marianne admitted. "I can try to teach the little I know," Gabriel offered. Then looked at his own feet as if ashamed. "If you want, of course. I would like that." They continued walking. Gabriel showed where the creek cut through the property, clear water where silver fish swam. Showed the woods in the distance that still had bobcats and deer. Showed the hill where you could see the sunset. They stood on top of the hill watching the sun go down, dyeing the sky orange, pink, purple. The cold autumn breeze made Marianne shiver. Gabriel took off his coat and placed it over her shoulders without asking. The coat smelled of him. Earth, tobacco, something faintly woodsy. Marianne pulled the fabric tighter around her body. "Marianne," Gabriel said suddenly, "can I ask something personal?" "You may. Have you ever—" He hesitated. "Ever had someone? A sweetheart? A suitor?" The question hurt. "No," Marianne replied with honesty that cost dear. "Never. No man ever looked at me that way." "Why not?" "Because I am too small, always was. Men don't see me as a woman. They see me as a child, or as something broken, something that needs pity, not love." Gabriel turned to her completely. The sunset light illuminated his face, highlighted his dark eyes, the beard he had finally trimmed, the strong line of his jaw. "They are blind," he said firmly. "All of them." Marianne felt tears pricking her eyes. "Don't start pitying me, Gabriel. I can't stand pity." "It's not pity," he said with intensity. "I'm not feeling pity. I'm feeling anger at those idiots who couldn't see what I see." "And what do you see?" Marianne asked with a trembling voice. Gabriel raised his hand slowly, as if afraid to startle her, touched her face with gentleness. "I see a strong woman who crossed the state alone to work in an unknown place. I see someone who turned a dead house into a home again. I see intelligent eyes and capable hands and a brave heart." Tears streamed down Marianne's face. Gabriel wiped them with his thumb, a gesture so tender it broke something inside her. But he pulled away. "Sorry," he said. "Shouldn't have said that. You work for me. It's not proper." He turned and began walking back to the house. Marianne stood on the hill, still wearing his coat, heart in pieces, and at the same time more whole than it had ever been. That night, Marianne couldn't sleep. Lay in bed, replaying Gabriel's words in her mind. The way he had touched her, the way he had looked at her, and the next morning, Sunday, everything changed again. A man arrived at the farm. Marianne heard a horse whinnying, male voices in front of the house, was preparing coffee when Gabriel entered the kitchen, with a closed expression she hadn't seen in days. Behind him came another man, about the same age as Gabriel, but completely different. Conventionally handsome, blonde hair, light eyes, dressed in an expensive suit even being Sunday morning on a farm. Smiled with perfect white teeth. Gabriel wasn't smiling. "Marianne, this is Ferdinand, my cousin. Ferdinand, this is Marianne, the cook." Ferdinand looked at Marianne. His eyes evaluated her from head to toe with a look she knew well. A look that measured, weighed, and found lacking. "The cook," Ferdinand repeated. He looked at Gabriel with a raised eyebrow. "Seriously, cousin, this is your solution." And so, with the arrival of a cruel man with a beautiful smile, the fragile piece of Victory Estate began to crack. Ferdinand entered the kitchen without being invited, like someone who had the right to be anywhere. Took a chair, sat at the table, stretched his legs, crossing his ankles. Behavior of a man who never needed to ask permission for anything. Gabriel stood in the doorway, jaw clenched. Marianne returned to the stove, feigning concentration on the coffee she was brewing, but her ears were alert. "So, cousin," Ferdinand began with a tone of casual conversation that fooled no one, "I thought a lot about our last talk. Came here to make an official proposal. I want to buy Victory Estate. I'm offering a fair price, above market value." "Already said it's not for sale," Gabriel replied with a controlled voice. Ferdinand laughed. "Come on, Gabriel, be sensible. You have no way to run this place alone. 2 old hands and a cook." He paused deliberately, looking at Marianne. "Peculiar. This isn't a farm operation. It's stubbornness." Marianne felt the word peculiar like a slap. Peculiar. Polite way of saying abnormal, strange, unsuitable. "It is my home," Gabriel said with growing firmness, "and it is functioning well." "Functioning well?" Ferdinand looked around the kitchen with theatrical disdain. "Gabriel, you are living like a hermit. This farm was once prosperous. Your uncle, God rest him, had 20 hands, produced double. Now it's withering. If you sell to me, I can bring back the glory of this place." "Don't want your glory. Want peace." Ferdinand sighed, as if dealing with a stubborn child. "All right, I'll stay a few days in town. Think better. When you realize you have no choice, find me." He stood up, but before leaving looked at Marianne again. "And you, little lady, don't delude yourself. My cousin is a lonely man, but he isn't crazy. He won't attach himself to you. When he finds a real woman, you'll be dismissed just like the others." The words were spoken with a cruel smile, disguised as friendly warning. Marianne felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. "Get out of my house," Gabriel said, voice dangerously low. Ferdinand raised his hands in mock surrender. Going. But think on what I said, about everything." He left, mounted his horse and rode off, kicking up dust. Gabriel stood in the kitchen, breathing heavy, hands clenched in fists. Marianne didn't dare look at him, continued preparing coffee with hands that trembled slightly. "Don't listen to what he said," Gabriel spoke finally. He is cruel. Always was." "He only spoke the truth," Marianne replied, keeping her voice steady. "I know my place." "Your place?" Gabriel turned to her. "What place?" Marianne finally looked at him. "I am your maid, Gabriel, nothing more, and what your cousin said makes sense. One day you will find someone, get married again, and that person won't want a cook who... Who what? A cook who makes me feel alive for the first time in years. A woman who turned this mausoleum into a home. Someone I look for excuses to be near." Marianne felt tears threatening to fall. "Don't do this. Don't give me hope that can't come true." "Why can't it?" "'Cause I know how the world works," she exploded. "I know men like you don't end up with women like me. You will realize that." Might not be today, might not be tomorrow, but eventually you will look at me and see what everyone always saw, something too small, too wrong, too insufficient. Gabriel crossed the kitchen in 3 long strides, stood in front of her, too close, looking down with intensity that stole the air from Marianne's lungs. You want to know what I see when I look at you? I see the bravest woman I ever met. I see someone who doesn't give up, even when the whole world says she isn't enough. I see eyes that shine when you cook, when you clean, when you turn broken things into something beautiful. I see the only person who made me want to fix myself. He raised his hand, touched her face. Gabriel. But the moment was interrupted by a knock on the door. Mrs. Teresa entered through the kitchen with a basket of eggs, stopped seeing the two there, so close, tension visible in the air. Sorry to interrupt, she said with a knowing smile. Brought fresh eggs for lunch. Gabriel stepped back, ran a hand through his hair. I'm going to work in the fields, he said abruptly and left. Mrs. Teresa put the basket on the table, observed Marianne with sharp eyes of someone who saw much life. That boy is completely lost for you, you know that, right? Marianne sat in the chair, legs weak. Can't be like that, won't work out. Why not? Because people like me don't get happy endings, Mrs. Teresa. Learned that early. The older woman sat beside her, took Marianne's hands in hers. Listen here, child. I've seen a lot in this life. Seen beautiful and rich folks be miserable. Seen simple and poor folks have true love. Beauty passes, money runs out. But when 2 broken people find each other and fix one another, that's rare. That's precious. She squeezed Marianne's hands. Gabriel was dead inside before you came. Now he smiles, he talks, he takes care of the house. You did that, and he sees you, Marianne, sees you for real. Don't let fear or cruel people's words steal that. But what if his cousin is right? What if one day Gabriel realizes he can have someone better? Mrs. Teresa laughed. Better how? Taller? So what? Height don't warm a bed. Don't fill a heart, don't make a house a home. You stop measuring yourself by inches of body and start measuring yourself by size of heart. The words stayed with Marianne the rest of the day. She prepared lunch, served the food, washed dishes, but her mind was far away. Saw Gabriel out of the corner of her eye, the way he looked at her, the way he found excuses to bump into her, to touch her hand, passing a plate. That night after dinner, Gabriel stayed in the kitchen again. He had bathed, smelled of soap, hair still damp. Wore a clean white shirt with sleeves rolled to elbows. Still want to learn piano? He asked suddenly. Marianne blinked, surprised. Now? Why not? They went to the living room. Gabriel lit lamps creating soft golden light, sat on the piano bench, played keys producing simple chords. Marianne stood beside, watching his large fingers move with surprising skill for someone who claimed not to know how to play. That's beautiful, she said. It's music my mother liked. Sit here, he patted the bench beside him. Marianne sat, conscious of how close they were, the sides of their bodies touched. Gabriel took her right hand, placed it over the keys, guided her fingers. This is C. This is D, E, F, G, A, B, back to C. His fingers guided hers over the keys. Marianne could barely pay attention to the notes, felt his heat, his scent, his solid presence beside her. Now try alone, Gabriel instructed, letting go of her hand. Marianne tried to repeat the notes, missed a few. Gabriel laughed, a sound so rare and precious she stopped playing just to look at him. You laughed, she said, amazed. Did I? Yes. It's the first time I see you laugh for real. Gabriel stopped smiling, but there was something soft in his eyes. You make me laugh, Marianne. Make me feel I can go back to being human, not just a ghost. You were never a ghost. Was. For 3 years I was. But then you came with your battered suitcase and your wooden stool and your hands that fix broken things. And I realized maybe I could be fixed too. He turned on the bench facing her. Marianne did the same. Were so close she needed to lift her face to look at him. "I don't know how to do this," Gabriel said with raw vulnerability. "Don't know how to court a woman right. Amelia was an arranged marriage by the families. Never was romance, never was choice. But you, I choose you. Want to choose you every day." Marianne felt her heart explode. "Gabriel, The front door opened with a bang. Ferdinand entered again, now visibly drunk, stumbled into the room, looked at the two sitting together at the piano. "What a touching scene," he said, slurring words. "The lonely widower and the dwarf. It's pathetic, Gabriel. You're so desperate for company you settle for this? Get out." Gabriel stood up, voice dangerous. "I'll get out. But first, I'll speak some truths." He pointed at Marianne. "You think he loves you. He's just using you because he's alone. When he gets tired, when the novelty passes, you'll be thrown out like trash." Ferdinand stumbled closer, looked at Gabriel with contempt. "Your father was right about you. Bastard son good for nothing. Can't keep a wife alive, can't manage a farm, can't even choose a woman right." Something broke inside Gabriel. He lunged at Ferdinand with fist raised. The two men collided, fell to the floor, fighting, punches, grunts, furniture tipping. Marianne screamed for them to stop. Mr. Vincent, who lived nearby, heard the commotion and came running. Took 5 minutes for the two to separate the cousins. Ferdinand had a bleeding lip. Gabriel had a cut on his eyebrow. "You're crazy," Ferdinand spat blood. "I'll sue. I'll take this farm in court. I'll prove you are incompetent." "Then try," Gabriel growled. "But while I'm alive, this land is mine, and you never set foot here again." Mr. Vincent dragged Ferdinand out, put him on his horse, sent him away. Gabriel stayed in the destroyed living room, breathing heavy, holding his bleeding forehead. Marianne brought water and clean cloths, cleaned his wound with gentleness while he remained seated on the overturned sofa. Wasn't deep, but bled plenty. "You shouldn't have hit him," she said softly. "He insulted you." "I won't let anyone insult you." "Gabriel, look at me." He lifted his face. There was pain in his eyes, not physical pain, but something deeper. "Maybe he's right," Marianne said with trembling voice. "Maybe it's better I go before this gets more complicated." "No." Gabriel grabbed her wrists. "You are not leaving. Gabriel, I love you." The words fell between them like a bomb. Absolute silence. Marianne stood paralyzed, eyes wide. "I love you," Gabriel repeated. "Don't know when it started. Maybe when you arrived here, head held high, even being dismissed unjustly. Maybe when you cleaned my filthy kitchen without complaining. Maybe when you looked at this dead house and decided to bring it back to life. Maybe when you smiled at me for the first time. Don't know when, but I know I do. And I know I'll never let you go." Tears streamed down Marianne's face. "You can't love me. I am... If you say too small, I swear I'll scream. You are perfect size, perfect for me, perfect in the way you fit in my arms, perfect in the way you make me feel whole again. And I won't let you leave. Never." He pulled her close, hugged tight, buried his face in her hair. Marianne hugged back, allowing herself finally to believe. Stayed like that for a long time, just holding each other. But the next morning, reality hit hard. Marianne woke with the dawn and went to town to buy supplies. Needed flour, salt, coffee. Mrs. Rose's general store was on the main street of the small town of White Creek. When she entered the establishment, conversations stopped. Women shopping turned to look. Whispers started. "That's her, Gabriel Thorne's cook. Heard she bewitched the poor man. A woman of that size, what a shame. He ought to find a decent wife." Marianne pretended not to hear. Approached the counter, where Mrs. Rose, a kind woman of 50-something, was organizing cans. "Good morning, Mrs. Rose." "Good morning, child." The woman smiled with genuine affection. "What do you need today?" Marianne made her order. While Mrs. Rose separated the goods, two women approached. Marianne recognized them from church. Mrs. Claudia and Mrs. Herminia, farmers' wives, dressed in expensive clothes, noses in the air. "So you are the famous cook," Mrs. Claudia said with sugary tone that barely hid poison. "How interesting. Gabriel finally found someone willing to care for that abandoned farm." "Interesting indeed," Mrs. Herminia agreed, looking Marianne up and down. "Of course, a woman of good family would never accept living in that isolation. But I suppose for certain people, any opportunity will do." Marianne gripped the edge of the counter. "I understand perfectly what you ladies are insinuating, and I don't care. Honest work is no cause for shame." "Work," Mrs. Claudia repeated with a mean giggle. "Is that what they're calling it now?" The insinuation was clear and dirty. Marianne felt blood rise to her face. "Enough!" Mrs. Rose slapped her hand on the counter. "In my store, no one gets disrespected. If you ladies have nothing else to buy, you may leave." The two women left indignant, but not before casting looks of contempt at Marianne. Mrs. Rose wrapped the supplies, handed to Marianne. "Don't pay mind to those vipers," she said with care. "They're jealous because their husbands are brutes who treat them like furniture. Gabriel Thorne is a good man. Any woman with sense would be happy with him." "But they're right about one thing," Marianne said with low voice. "I don't have good family, don't have a dowry, don't have anything to offer. You got a good heart, that's worth more than any dowry." Marianne left the store carrying heavy bundles. Her arms trembled with the weight. Had barely walked 30 feet when she heard a female voice. "Need help?" Marianne turned and saw a young woman, perhaps early 20s, pretty in a simple way, friendly smile. Wore a gingham dress, brown hair in a braid. "I'm Alice, the school teacher. Saw you in the store. Those women are horrible, aren't they?" "They are," Marianne agreed. Alice took one of the heavier bundles. "Come on, I'll help you to the wagon." "Where you boarded?" "I work at Victory Estate." "Ah," Alice said with understanding. "So you are Marianne, heard of you." "Bad things, I imagine?" Alice shook her head. "Actually heard Mrs. Rose defending you. Said you are an honest worker and the gossips should be ashamed." "I agree with her." The two walked together to where Mr. Oliver waited with the wagon. Alice helped load the supplies. "If you need a friend, come find me," Alice said. "Also know how it is to be judged. Single teacher, live alone." "The church ladies find it scandalous." Marianne smiled for the first time that morning. "Thank you. Would be nice to have a friend." She returned to the farm with heavy heart. The village women's words echoed in her mind. The dirty insinuations, the looks of contempt. Gabriel was in the yard fixing a fence when she arrived, came to help unload supplies, noticed immediately something was wrong. "What happened?" "Nothing," Marianne lied. "Marianne." She sighed. "Went to town. Heard what people are saying about me, about us." Gabriel went rigid. "What are they saying? That I'm an opportunist, that I bewitched you, that a woman like me shouldn't be here, that you deserve someone better." Gabriel dropped the bundles he held with force that made Marianne jump. "Going to town right now, going to talk to these people." "No!" Marianne grabbed his arm. "We'll make things worse. We'll just confirm there is something between us." "And there is." She looked at him with broken heart. "Maybe there shouldn't be." Gabriel held her face between large hands. "Look at me. I don't care what those people think, don't care about the town, the neighbors, the whole world. Only care about you." "But I care," she said with tears. "I care because they will judge you, will belittle you for being with me. Will say you lost your mind, got desperate, will turn something beautiful into scandal." Folks, if you are liking this story, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel. "Then let them talk," Gabriel said firmly. "Let the whole world talk. In the end, they'll get tired. But I'll never get tired of you." He kissed her forehead, gesture so tender Marianne felt more tears fall. But in the following days, the pressure only increased. Ferdinand didn't give up. Started spreading rumors through the region, said Gabriel was mentally unstable since wife's death. Said the farm was in ruins, said he had legal right to contest inheritance. Legal documents started arriving, summons from the courthouse. Ferdinand was really suing, claiming Gabriel was incapable of managing property, and as next of kin, he should take over. Gabriel spent hours locked in study, reading documents, writing responses, consulting lawyer from White Creek. Tension returned to his face. Shadow of sadness returned to eyes. Marianne saw all that and felt guilt growing. Before she arrived, Gabriel lived in solitary peace. Sad, yes, but in peace. Now was being sued, gossiped about, attacked, all because he dared get close to her. It was a morning in December, 3 months after Marianne had arrived, that she made a decision. Couldn't stay, couldn't be reason for Gabriel to lose everything. If she left, Ferdinand wouldn't have arguments. His life would go back to normal. He would be in peace. Marianne packed her things silently. Took old suitcase, put few belongings she had, wrote letter to Gabriel, hands shaking while forming each word. Gabriel, you gave me something no one ever gave me. Made me feel seen, valued, loved. But I cannot be the reason for you to lose your peace, your property, your future. The world doesn't accept people like me, and I won't let you suffer for choosing to defend me. Thank you for everything. You will always be my only true love. Marianne. She left letter on kitchen table. Took suitcase and stool, left through back door before dawn, while everyone still slept. Walked down dirt road toward town. Suitcase was heavy, arms ached. But she kept walking, step after step, moving away from only house where she had been happy. Sun was rising when she heard horse galloping, turned and saw Gabriel mounted, coming fast down road. He pulled reins, dismounted before animal stopped completely. "What are you doing?" he shouted. "Where do you think you are going?" "I'm leaving. It's best for you." Gabriel walked to her with furious steps. "Best for me? You think leaving me is best for me? You are being sued because of me. They are judging you, belittling you. If I leave, everything stops." "Nothing stops," Gabriel growled. "Ferdinand will keep trying to steal this farm with or without you here. Difference is, with you here, I have reason to fight. Without you, I have nothing." He took her suitcase, threw it on ground. Took Marianne by waist with both hands, and then did something that stole her breath completely. Gabriel lifted Marianne in his arms, lifted her from ground with ease, held against chest, looked in her eyes with intensity that burned. "You want to know the truth? You are perfect. Perfect exactly as you are. Perfect in height, perfect in size, perfect in the way you fit in my arms, perfect in the way you make me feel whole again, and I won't let you leave. Never." Mike, Marianne was crying, hands gripping his shoulders. "Gabriel, the world, damn the world," he practically shouted. "I spent whole life letting world decide who I am. Bastard son, failed widower, lonely farmer. But you made me remember I can decide who I want to be, and I want to be the man who loves you, the man who chooses you every day, the man who will fight for you against anyone." He placed her back on ground gently but didn't let go. Kept hands on her waist. "Marry me," he said, "not as maid, as wife, as partner, as the woman I love more than anything in this world." Marianne sobbed. "Are you sure? Sure you won't regret? Never been more sure of anything in life? Then yes, yes, I marry you." Gabriel pulled her for kiss. Was desperate kiss, urgent, full of promises and hope and love that had been contained too long. When finally separated, both were breathless. Gabriel picked up her suitcase from ground, put on horse, lifted Marianne and sat her in saddle. Mounted behind her, arms around holding reins, returned to farm like that, her nestled against his chest, finally allowing herself to believe in happy ending. When they arrived, Mr. Vincent and Mrs. Teresa were waiting on porch, had found letter, were worried, but when saw the two returning together, smiled. "Finally," Mrs. Teresa said. "Thought was going to have to lock you two in a room till you admitted you love each other." "We are getting married," Gabriel announced, "and anyone who doesn't like it can get off my land." Mr. Vincent laughed loud. "About time, boss. About time." Following days were whirlwind. Gabriel went to courthouse to register intention to marry. Faced looks, whispers, judgments, but this time didn't lower head. Walked with spine straight, Marianne's hand firmly held in his. Ferdinand tried one last strike, appeared at farm with lawyer, threatening to contest even the marriage. But Gabriel faced him with cold calm. "I'm tired of you, Ferdinand. Tired of your threats, your lies, your malice. You want this farm? Then you'll have to kill me first. Because while I'm alive, this land is mine, and my wife will live here with me." The lawyer examined documents, stated Gabriel had legal right over all property. Ferdinand had no basis to contest. He left furious, but defeated. The wedding was simple. Small church in town, just Mr. Vincent, Mrs. Teresa, Mrs. Rose and Alice as witnesses. Father Anselm conducted ceremony with genuine blessings. Marianne wore simple white muslin dress she sewed herself. Gabriel wore dark suit that belonged to uncle. When exchanged rings, hands of both trembled. "I pronounce you husband and wife," priest said. "You may kiss the bride." Gabriel stooped down. Marianne stood on tiptoes. Lips met in sweet kiss that was promise of everything to come. There was small celebration at farm. Mrs. Teresa prepared feast, was music, dancing, laughter. For first time in years, Victory Estate had life, joy, hope. That night, when we're alone, Gabriel carried Marianne in arms, crossing threshold of room that would now be theirs. No more maid's room, but couple's room, of partners, of people who chose each other against all odds. Months following brought deep changes. Gabriel hired more hands for cotton harvest. Production increased. With money, started renovations on house. Painted walls, fixed roof, restored garden. Marianne assumed not just kitchen but administration of house. Discovered she had talent for numbers, for organization, for dealing with suppliers and buyers. Gabriel, seeing this, made her full partner in farm business. Faced more judgments, more gossip, but with time, results spoke louder. Victory Estate returned to prosperity. People started respecting, even if reluctantly, the unlikely couple who made it work. Alice became close friend. Visited frequently, drank tea with Marianne, talked about books and dreams. She brought other friends. Young doctor newly arrived in town. Family of Italian immigrants, people who didn't judge by appearance. Gabriel changed visibly. Silent and somber man became someone who smiled, who conversed, who had hope in tomorrow. He woke hugged with Marianne every morning and thanked silently for being brave enough to love her. Marianne blossomed. For first time in life, felt complete. Not just for having husband who loved her, but for finding her place in world. Place where abilities were valued, where size didn't matter, where she was seen as complete and capable woman. Didn't have children. Tried but didn't come. In beginning was sadness, but with time realized were complete just the two. Farm became their creation, workers their chosen family. 5 years passed like breath of wind. It was autumn afternoon in 1933. Marianne was in garden she herself had redesigned and planted. Roses of all colors climbed walls of house, painted gleaming white. Jasmine perfumed air. Pecan trees heavy with nuts surrounded impeccable lawn. She was gathering flowers for arrangement when heard horse arriving. Turned and saw Gabriel dismounting. He was 33 now, still tall and strong, but with some lines around eyes that came from laughter, not sadness. "How was the city?" Marianne asked. "Productive. Closed contract with exporter from Savannah, buying all our production for double last year's price." He walked to her, wrapped by waist. Victory Estate was now one of most prosperous in region. Had 25 hands, produced cotton of recognized quality, had modern irrigation system Gabriel installed. Marianne was 31, still measured 4 feet 10 inches, but didn't think about it anymore. When looked in mirror, didn't see small body world rejected, saw loved woman, saw capable administrator, saw complete person. Know what Mrs. Herminia said in town today? Gabriel recounted with amusement in voice. Asked if I could recommend Marianne to teach farm management to her daughter. Marianne laughed. Same Mrs. Herminia who called me opportunist. The same. Thinks success silences critics better than any argument. They walked hand in hand to porch, sat in rocking chairs Gabriel built, looked at property they had transformed together. Mr. Vincent and Mrs. Teresa, now in 60s, still lived on property, had larger house, more comfortable, gift from Gabriel and Marianne. New families worked fields, children played near quarters, life pulsed in every corner. Do you regret, Marianne asked suddenly, choosing me, facing all that? Gabriel turned to her with expression of absolute certainty. Never. Not one day. Not one moment. He stood up, extended hand. Dance with me? There's no music. We don't need music. Marianne took his hand. Gabriel pulled her up and then, as he did that day on road 5 years ago, lifted her in arms. Spun slowly on porch, holding his wife against chest, laughing when she laughed. Sun was setting, dyeing sky golden, orange and pink. Victory Estate shone under evening light, painted house, flowering gardens, green fields, promising future. You are perfect, Gabriel whispered in Marianne's ear. We're perfect that day, are perfect now. We'll be perfect tomorrow, and every day after that. Marianne kissed his neck, heart overflowing with happiness. We are perfect together, corrected. 2 broken pieces that fit and formed something complete. He spun her one more time, laughing, and she closed eyes, feeling movement, feeling love, feeling life she had built against all odds. World had said she wasn't enough. That was too small, too wrong, too inadequate. But Gabriel had looked beyond what world saw. Had seen brave woman, loyal companion, capable partner, had seen not with eyes of prejudice, but with eyes of true love. And true love doesn't measure in inches, measures in courage, in choice, in daily commitment, measures in way 2 people decide against all contrary voices that they will stay together, that they will build together, that they will love together. Story of Marianne and Gabriel became legend in region. Years later, people still told about tiny cook and widowed farmer who defied world and won, not because we're perfect, but because recognized perfection in one another when no one else could see. And at Victory Estate, while sun set over golden fields, 2 hearts beat as one, 2 pieces that found each other, 2 people who chose each other, 2 souls who proved that size of love can never be measured by height of body, but only by depth of heart.